Welcome to this explainer. Have you ever walked into a conversation thinking, oh, this is going to be a total breeze, only to watch it just instantly derail into this massive, heated argument? Yeah, we've literally all been there. Today, we're building your ultimate conversational survival guide. We're going to figure out how to diffuse that tension, step back from the ledge, and actually turn adversaries back into collaborators. And we're doing it using exactly 12 powerful, scientifically backed phrases. All right, so let's just dive right in. We're mapping out the life cycle of an argument into 4 clear, actionable steps: the spark, the fire, the walls, and finally, the repair.
Starting us off with step 1, the spark. This is all about managing those early disagreements.
Look, every argument starts with a tiny spark. It's like dropping a lit match on the floor. Imagine 2 coworkers clashing over a huge project. One pitches an idea, and the other just instantly fires back, "You're wrong." Boom. That blunt statement just kicked the match right into the dry brush. It creates a winner and a loser, and it immediately puts the other person on the defensive. Instead, we need to pivot. Try saying, "I see it differently. Can I share my perspective?" This simple little shift, it's a game changer. It transforms you from an opponent into a partner who's just looking at the exact same problem from a new angle.
And this perfectly captures the core psychology here. Questions open conversations, while statements close them. Asking a genuine question invites curiosity. It leaves room for the other person's reality. But a blunt, absolute statement, that just slams the door right in their face.
Here's another super common spark. You're explaining your weekend plans to your partner, and they look, well, completely lost. Your knee-jerk reaction is probably to sigh and say, "I already told you." But think about it. That implies they're either not listening or, worse, just not smart enough to get it. That breeds instant resentment. Instead, take the burden on yourself. Hand them an olive branch and say, "Let me try explaining it a different way." The real takeaway here, clarity is your responsibility, not theirs. When you adopt the mindset that making sure the message lands is entirely on your shoulders, you basically strip the ego right out of the interaction. You stop blaming them for not getting it, and you start actively looking for a better way to communicate. Moving on to step 2, the fire. Let's talk about stopping the escalation. So what happens if we totally miss that early spark? Adrenaline starts pumping, and the brush catches fire. Now, let's be real. Never in the history of human conversation has anyone actually calmed down when told to calm down. It's literally like throwing gasoline on a grease fire because it's just so deeply invalidating. A way better approach is to validate their emotional state, even if you totally disagree with their point. Just say, "I can see this matters to you. Help me understand." The psychology behind this is honestly fascinating. As humans, we have this primal, hardwired need to be understood. When someone's yelling, a lot of the time they're just turning up the volume because they feel invisible. The second people actually feel heard, they naturally drop that hostility and physically relax. Picture a tense board meeting. Everyone's talking over each other and someone rudely interrupts you. If you snap and yell, "Let me finish," well, you kind of sound like a scolding parent, which only fuels the fire. Flip the script. Set a collaborative boundary instead. Try, "I want to hear you. Can I just finish this thought first?" You're reassuring them that they'll get their turn while firmly protecting your own right to speak. Sometimes logic just completely leaves the room. If the heat is rising, tensions are peaking, and you're just going around in circles, you've got to drop the dismissive, "This is ridiculous." Swap it out for a strategic timeout. Literally just ask, "Can we pause and come back to this in 10 minutes? Taking a short break prevents words you can't take back. It's absolutely essential. Look, when we're enraged, our brains are basically flooded with cortisol. Rational thought? Almost impossible. A 10-minute pause physically stops you from saying those damaging things that you can't unring, the kind of words that could permanently ruin a relationship. Okay, so we've got a handle on the shouting and the outward escalation. But what happens when the fire turns into ice and they completely shut down? Conflict doesn't always look like a raging fire. Sometimes it looks like a frozen glacier. And dealing with total silence or extreme defensiveness, that requires a completely different set of tools. Which brings us to step 3, the walls. How to overcome defensiveness. When people feel scared or blamed, they retreat behind these massive defensive fortifications. And the absolute worst thing you can do when someone puts up those walls is to point them out. Asking, "Why are you getting so defensive?" ironically just makes them feel wildly misunderstood. To coax them into lowering the drawbridge, you have to explicitly state your intent. Say, "I'm not trying to attack you. I want us to solve this together." It's a gentle reminder that, hey, we're on the same team here.
Now, what if the roles are reversed? What if you're the one being blamed for a missed deadline or some massive mistake? Your gut instinct is going to scream at you to say, that's not my fault. But you've got to swallow that defensive reflex. Pivot directly to the future instead. Try saying, let's figure out what happened and how to fix it. Because solutions move things forward, while blame keeps you stuck. This shift is basically magic. Focusing on actionable solutions actually gets things done. Playing the blame game is like dropping an anchor. It keeps both of you trapped in the past, arguing over spilled milk instead of just grabbing a mop. We've all been there, right? A minor roommate dispute over the dishes suddenly snowballs into this massive character assassination, and they're yelling, "You always do this." When things get that personal or broad, ask for permission to narrow it down. Say, I'd like to focus on this specific situation. Is that okay with you? That exact phrase cuts through the historical baggage and snaps them firmly back to the present issue.
And if the other person completely shuts down and gives you the silent treatment, don't try to pry them open. Applying pressure with passive-aggressive questions like, "So you're just not going to talk?" that just reinforces the lock on their door. Demonstrate patience instead. Say, "I'm here when you're ready. This matters to me." That leaves the door unlatched. It tells them the relationship is safe whenever they're ready to step back in.
Finally, step 4, the repair, apologies and rebuilding. Once the heat is gone and those defensive walls are finally dismantled, we reach the aftermath of the storm. It's time to rebuild trust. But first, we absolutely have to define and avoid the dreaded faux apology. A faux apology is a fake apology. It's a terrible mirage. It sounds like an apology, but it's totally hollow. The classic example, "I'm sorry you feel that way." Ugh, that phrase completely avoids taking any real responsibility and subtly shifts the blame onto the other person just for having emotions.
So instead of dealing out that toxic faux apology, a real structural apology actually owns the impact. You want to say, "I'm sorry, that wasn't my intention, but I see how it landed." This is incredibly powerful. Why? Because it separates your intent from the impact. You might not have intended to step on their toes, but you are acknowledging that their toes are, in fact, hurting because of your actions. After a really grueling argument, the overwhelming temptation is to just say, "Let's just forget it happened," and move on. But if you truly want to rebuild the relationship, you can't just sweep the argument under the rug. It just creates a lump that you're both bound to trip over later. To actively repair the breach, ask this: what do we each need to move forward from here? Because unresolved conflict doesn't disappear. It resurfaces. We really have to do the hard, sometimes uncomfortable work of rebuilding, or that buried conflict will absolutely come back to haunt us. These 12 phrases, they're tools. They'll help you navigate all the way from the initial spark right through to the final repair. So here's the question I want to leave you with today. The next time tension starts to rise, which of these 12 phrases are you going to pull out to save your very next argument?